Hello everyone, back to today's second video. We're going to do the GWV Sunday Round-Up for today's second video. So it's going to be your usual eclectic mix of this and that for your Sunday afternoon viewing pleasure. So we're going to have a look at things like ENSO, sea surface temperature anomalies in the Atlantic and the Pacific Ocean. We'll also have a look at the quasi-Siberian oscillation, got a little bit more information on that. And of course have a look at weather next week to 10 days as well, do a little bit of forecasting. Too. So going to be quite a bit crammed in to the video. I hope you find it interesting and informative. No solar tracker for this video because, very special day at GWV, we have released Solar Sunday. So this is only our second Solar Sunday of the year. Might be the final one of the year as well. Just depends if we can fit another one in August, but we may not be able to because by then probably be a bit snowed under with autumn updates. So we may get another Solar Sunday in August, but the second Solar Sunday of the year has been released today. It's here on the homepage. Just scroll down the page a little bit and you'll find it above the pollen count. And later on today, that video will be placed on the Solar Cycles 24-25 updates page, and there'll be a written summary that goes with that video as well. So, with that said, I think we'll get on with your Sunday Roundup. We're going to begin by having a look at the cold and warm episodes by season chart from CPC and NOAA. So, this is depicting every cold episode going right way back to 1950. So the blue number in the box there for 1950, or blue numbers in the boxes for 1950, shows that in the year of 1950 we actually had a La Nina taking place through the first part of the year anyway, before it faded back with these black numbers to ENSO neutral, be it on the cold side of ENSO neutral. So we scroll down through all of these years, through the 60s, through the 70s, through the 80s, through the 90s, through the 2000s, and we come to the year that we're interested in, 2018. And what's happened is that we have seen the end, now the official end, of La Nina. So La Nina began last year in 2017, very, very late starter with our first blue number in the box appearing there for the tri-monthly period of September, October, November, with a negative deviation of minus 0.7 degrees. At its peak, which happened in November, December, January, the La Nina reached its peak in that tri-monthly period at an anomaly of -1, so 1 degree below average. And then La Nina continued through the first 3 tri-monthly periods of 2018, very gradually fading away, weakening as it does so. And so we have now left behind La Nina for the last tri-monthly period, which of course is March, April and May. That tri-monthly period takes us back to an anomaly of minus 0.4. So to get a La Nina designated, and the same is true for El Nino, but on the positive side, you have to reach required sort of thresholds. You have to go down to half a degree or more below average. In the case of El Nino, it would be half a degree or more above average, and you have to do it over 5 tri-monthly periods. Over 5 tri-monthly periods. So that number there is an important number, minus 0.4, because it takes us underneath the minimum threshold, that half a degree threshold, to continue with La Nina. So therefore we have returned officially and formally what we already knew anyway several weeks ago, but officially now we have returned back to ENSO neutral conditions. La Nina is well and truly over. These are the sea surface temperature anomaly charts from NOAA for the Atlantic and the Pacific Ocean. Well, actually, they cover all of the oceans of the planet, but we're primarily interested in the Pacific and the Atlantic Oceans. That's how the sea surface temperature anomalies were looking last week when we did the Sunday Roundup last week. This is the very latest. There's been very little change. So again, let's go back to last week and then go forwards to the very latest chart from the 7th of June. Very little change. We continue to see the ENSO region, which is, of course, from Peru to Indonesia across the equatorial Pacific Ocean. We continue to see that very, very slowly, very gradually warming up week by week. So we are back to ENSO neutral condition. Actually, over on the eastern side of the equatorial Pacific Ocean just there, it is a little bit warmer than average. Now, possibly that's the beginnings of a shift towards El Nino. We have to see about that. Further north in the Pacific Ocean, generally quite a cool scene in the northern part of the Pacific Ocean. And in the Atlantic, we still have this very unusual and very striking sort of sea surface temperature anomaly chart. So it's very cool up here in the northern part of the Atlantic Ocean. It's also pretty cool through the tropical Atlantic Ocean. And then in between, we have this warmer than average area there through the central part of the northern Atlantic Ocean. In theory, that probably pushes us towards a more unsettled type pattern. But before we get there, we need to see this area warming up. So at the moment, this area will still be dampening down the effects of the Atlantic. But if this warmer area that we have just here, sea surface temperature anomalies, if that pushes through, then I imagine we could go in to quite an unsettled sort of late summer phase. And that would tie in, of course, with the GWV summer forecast, which always predicted the most anticyclonic part of the summer would be early on through June, and then probably going into more unsettled conditions through July and particularly through to August. But of course, we'll wait and see on that. It's very early days this summer. Notice the shallow waters around the UK and also sort of in the Baltic Sea around here and also down across the Mediterranean. These are shallow waters. They are prone to very rapid temperature changes with the surface temperatures. So notice those shallow waters have warmed up a lot. It's very warm now around the coast of the UK and through the Baltic and down into the Mediterranean as well, all in response to the warm summer pattern that we've been seeing over the past few weeks. Well, it hasn't been that warm down in the Med, to be honest, but it's going to be generally always quite warm with the sea surface temperature anomalies in the Mediterranean at this time of year. But further north, certainly around the UK and through the North Sea into the Baltic Sea, it has generally warmed up quite a lot. With those sea surface temperature anomalies in the past couple of weeks, and that is in response to all of the warm weather that we've been getting just recently. So the CFSV2 is still predicting that we're going to go into a weak El Nino, a warm event through the sort of second half of the year. So this chart is showing us the forecast for the central part of the equatorial Pacific Ocean. So we've got different regions. Just to explain this, we have different regions in the equatorial Pacific Ocean. But 3.4 region is kind of like in the central part of the equatorial Pacific Ocean, and that's where we get these El Nino and La Nina events designated, what the sea surface temperature anomalies are doing through that central portion of the equatorial Pacific. Regions 1 and 2, we find them over here towards the eastern portion of the equatorial Pacific, and then we have region 4, which is more towards sort of Indonesia, probably a little bit out with those different regions, but that's the broad idea. So 3.4 is the important one. That's in the central part of the equatorial Pacific Ocean. The CFSV2 region 3.4 sea surface temperature anomaly forecast is to lift up into an El Nino event, into a warm event. So we've got the dates along the bottom of the chart, temperature anomalies along the side. That's where we're starting off at now on the warm side of ENSO neutral, and we find that the black dashed line is lifting up here through the second half of the summer into weak El Nino territory, and then reach its peak towards the end of the year, as it always does. Again, in weak El Nino threshold, so the maximum around 1 degree above average. So it's kind of like the same anomaly that we had for the La Nina, which was at its peak around 1 degree colder than average. This is around 1 degree warmer than average. It would be quite a weak El Nino. Certainly no sign of a super Nino, but a definite forecast there now from the CFS to go into weak El Nino through the second half of the year, and Modoki, central base El Nino as well. So this is the forecast from the CFS V2, the regions 1 and 2. Remember I said that's more towards the eastern part of the equatorial Pacific Ocean, more towards the Peruvian side, and you'll notice the black dash line here is a lot lower. It's actually staying within ENSO neutral territory for this eastern region 1 and 2 area of the equatorial Pacific Ocean. So clearly the forecast from CFS is to be cooler in the eastern part of the equatorial Pacific Ocean, warmer in the central part of the equatorial Pacific Ocean. When that happens, we call it a central-based Modoki or Modoki El Nino event, and that will, if it comes off, it will be something that we'll be focusing on a little bit in the winter updates, because the different, and they're starting in September, by the way, because the different regions, the effects of the peak of the El Nino event happening in different regions has different effects, if you see what I mean. So it'll be something that we'll talk about much more when we come to do the winter updates, if that forecast verifies. Right, have a look at the QBO next. This is quasi-biennial oscillation. This is from the University of Berlin website. They have updated their QBO time series charts to May, to last month now. So let's scroll down, just explain a little bit about what you're looking at here. So these white areas going back into the 1950s, those are the easterly QBO phases. The grey areas, the darker areas, they are the westerly QBO phases. Essentially, the QBO is just an index that's telling you the strength of the zonal westerlies, primarily through the tropics, but it also has an impact, particularly in autumn and winter, has impacts on the northern latitudes as well. So when you're in a westerly QBO, you are strengthening the zonal westerlies. When you're in an easterly QBO, you are weakening the zonal westerlies. And so in winter, easterly QBOs tend to go a little bit anyway, with a reduction of the zonal flow, and so you tend to get an increased sort of risk anyway of northern blocking, and so colder winters are more associated with easterly QBOs, milder winters are more associated with westerly QBOs. But it's not that straightforward, because there are deviations from this. For example, that winter I just highlighted there, which is a westerly QBO winter of 1955-1956. That is a westerly QBO winter, and whilst the first part of that winter was pretty mild, the second part of winter 1955-1956 was exceptionally cold. February 1956 was an exceptionally cold month. So despite the fact it was a westerly QBO, didn't make any difference to the fact that the winter of 1955-1956 was a cold winter. But on average, you tend to get the colder winters associated with the easterly QBO, and milder winters tend to be associated with westerly QBO. So let's scroll down to the very latest, and here we go. So we've been in the easterly QBO since last summer. We've got this white area appearing through the early part of 2017. We went down into the easterly QBO through the summer of 2017, and we remain in the easterly QBO now through to the summer of 2018. We should start to see signs soon of the westerly QBO appearing. The changes of the QBO, kind of like a pulse or a heartbeat, so it should be very, very regular, although there are certain periods where things go a bit awry. We had a failure of the easterly QBO in 2015-16, so the westerly QBO became very prolonged, starting in early 2015, going right way through to the middle of 2017. So things can go wrong with this, but generally you should see westerly and easterly QBO phases coming and going very sort of regularly, almost in a pulse-like fashion. No sign of the westerly QBO yet. We'll know when the westerly QBO starts to appear at the top of the axis, because we'll get a grey area like you see there, and like you see there, like you see there. We'll get a grey area beginning to appear up here. There's no sign of it yet, so the ECQBO is certainly going to continue through this summer now. That's for definite. We aren't going to see, even if West EQBO begins to appear at the top of the atmosphere later in the summer, it won't get down to the boundary of the atmosphere where weather takes place. Certainly won't get down there through the summer. So it's going to be an ECQBO summer, and then possibly moving into the West EQBO through the autumn and into the winter. But of course, until we see the West EQBO actually starting to appear on this chart, then will just be a continuation of easterly QBO conditions. Central England temperature for June looks like that, so very warm month yet again so far. This is provisional up to the 8th of June. We're standing at 16.2, an anomaly of nearly 3 degrees above average. It follows on from April and from May, which were both very warm months, coming out with anomalies of around 2 degrees above average as well. I expect this to tick down a little bit in the next week or two, because I think we are going to start to bring in some slightly cooler and more unsettled air from off the Atlantic. So I don't think we'll hold at that sort of level, but it is going to be another appreciably warmer than average month. I think that is very certain. So having a look at the GFS temperature precipitation ensembles, we're looking at Market Raisin today, which is very close to our good friend James Ackrill. And of course, there was a minor earthquake going on in that part of the world last night. I think James was reporting that he felt the earth moving a little bit last night around 10:30. So a minor earthquake affecting sort of Lincolnshire, Yorkshire, that sort of area last night, which has been on the news this morning. So the red line here is the 30-year upper air temperature average for Market Raisin, and we can see that we are substantially warmer than average still at the moment. It is going to cool down a little bit over the next couple of days, but then going quite warm again towards the end of the week. Overall, the temperatures are staying above average, so you can see that quite clearly. The temperature ensembles, upper air temperature ensembles, are staying above average really through to the latter stage of the month. It's going towards the 25th of June now, so again towards the end of the month, and staying above average with those temperature anomalies. The only difference is that it's at a slightly lower level compared to what we've had over the past few weeks, but even so, still continuing warmer than average. And so that's why I say it's almost definite that this June, even though we're only a week in, I think it's almost definite that this June will be appreciably warmer than average. As far as the precipitation is concerned, loads of dry weather coming up until we get towards the middle part of the month, and then it does look as though it is beginning to turn more unsettled with some rainfall spikes coming through then. Very useful rainfall, I would have thought, because it has been very dry recently in that part of the world. Not desperately wet, though, by any means, and although it's a little bit more unsettled around this middle second half of the month, it certainly doesn't look like a very unsettled spell of weather is setting up at this stage. Always have to caveat that, because you never know if things are going to change. They can do very, very quick, but at the moment it doesn't look like we're going to go into a really unsettled spell of weather. Surface temperatures looking like this, so that's 20 degrees, that's 10 degrees. These do undercook the temperatures a little bit, so it's hovering around 20 degrees really for the next week at Market Raisin, but you can add a degree or two more onto that, and just staying at that sort of level really through to the end of the chart. So no big deviations, to be honest, from where we are right now. Notice there are a few very hot outliers beginning to appear for this final sort of week of June. Few of those on some members are going up to 30 degrees. And remember, they undercook the temperatures a little bit as well, so it'd probably be a bit hotter if they came off than that suggests. So a chance of some hotter weather maybe in the second half of the month. Of course, that's in the unreliable time frame. It's certainly going to stay warmer than average. We can say that quite definitively. Temperature anomalies look like that, so this going from the 9th through to 17th of June, coming out generally a little bit warmer than average for the UK and Ireland. Not as big an anomaly as we've had over the past few weeks, but even so, still above average with the temperature anomalies. Precipitation anomalies, wetter than average for the north and west, drier than average for the southeast in the week ahead from the 9th to the 17th of June. That's how the latest GFS run is looking for Wednesday, with a ridge of high pressure building from the Azores high into the UK. But Thursday does see a change. We get a return of the westerlies on Thursday with wet and windy weather in the north and west. We have got the Azores ridge very close to the south, so any rain is going to be really light and patchy as it moves southwards through Thursday. And then Friday into the weekend, we gradually move this trough in from off the Atlantic. So that does look rather more unsettled. That will be bringing showers, possibly some longer spells of rain, and they could be quite heavy and thundery as well as that trough moves through next weekend. So next weekend could be rather more unsettled than we've been used to with our weekends for quite a while. Was big thunderstorms across Scotland, though, yesterday, remember. We go through to Monday, 18th of June, and we find that the ridge from the Azores high is beginning to build back into the south, although the flow remains a flat westerly one. But for the south, a lot of dry weather, some showers or maybe more persistent areas of rain for the north. That's how we go up towards day 10. So we tried to build that ridge from the Azores high again, but it's flattened off as low pressure continues to roll in to the northwest. So certainly for the north and west, it's more unsettled in the next week to 10 days. But for the south and east, we remain with quite a strong influence from that ridge from the Azores high. A little bit of a mini heat wave showing up in the extended range of today's GFS. So this takes us to Thursday, the 21st of June, where we're beginning to start to pull up a southerly wind there. But very quickly, we're starting to move low pressure in off the Atlantic. So that's a classic sort of brief mini plume moving up from Spain, a brief mini Spanish plume, bringing initially some very hot air up from the south, but really quickly that's pushed away, probably by violent thunderstorms, as this low pressure in its weather front turns wind back into the west. So that's a little bit of a mini heat wave showing up there around the 21st, 22nd to 23rd of June, with the chance of seeing the temperature up to 30 degrees potentially, but also very quickly breaking down into probably quite severe thunderstorms. That is the upper air temperature chart for Saturday 23rd of June, and that heat being pushed away into Europe. And then we go through into the very end of this GFS run, and it turns quite unsettled, and it is pretty cool as well, but that's right at the extended range and not worth worrying about. ECM looks like that, so the ridge is through the country on Wednesday. Thursday, this brings this wet and windy weather to Scotland and Northern Ireland. That will be quite a change on what we've had over the past few weeks, but by the time that rain gets into the south, it'll be very light and patchy. Next weekend does look quite unsettled as this trough moves in from off the Atlantic. That could bring showers or longer spells of rain, just a cooler feel as well. And then into the following week, this is Monday the 18th of June, and this looks rather more unsettled compared to what the GFS is showing. So this is bringing wet and windy weather into the north and west, but for the south and the southeast, probably not too much rain because we are close to that ridge from the Azores. But that's how we finish up with the ECM at day 10, which is Wednesday 20th of June. Actually, it does look quite cool and quite unsettled. The ECM this morning is significantly cooler and more unsettled compared to the GFS. So it is possible that we are going to go into a rather more unsettled and changeable scenario than the GFS and its ensembles are forecasting. But at the moment, that's quite speculative. Finally, I'll just show you a couple of charts of CFS V2. So this is the 700 millibar height anomaly forecast from the CFS for July. It's placing an area of above average heights, again, quite close to the country to our east. Also a ridge there. But in between, we may have a bit of a dip in the jet stream. So low pressure might be a little bit more influential through July, despite the fact we've got above average heights just to our east. And that's 700 millibar height anomaly for August. Now, this is one of those charts that is on a knife edge of two different scenarios. So we've got a lot of above average heights to our north. So there's high pressure around Scandinavia, there's high pressure going into Iceland, in theory, that could be quite hot. That could be dragging in easterly winds. But what the model doesn't show, the risk that you have with that kind of pattern, especially as you're pushing that ridge towards Iceland and even towards Greenland, what you can have is a trough of low pressure parked underneath it. And if you get that trough of low pressure underneath the block, in summer, that's going to be dismal. That will bring a lot of heavy rain and overcast skies, and the jet stream will go to the south of that trough generally, so the jet stream will be down there, and generally that can just be very cool, very unsettled conditions. So it's one of those charts that's on a knife edge between two rather extreme possibilities during August. Temperature anomalies from the CFS-V2 for July. Nothing particularly special, actually. It does look rather cooler there for western parts of Europe. The warmth is over in the east of Europe during July. And by the time you get through to August, actually, Western Europe is hinting at being a little bit on the colder than average side. So that does go along with the idea that with all this high pressure that's going on up here, well, we possibly have an area of low pressure parked underneath it across sort of western and central parts of Europe. So that's a deteriorating summer forecast that we've got there at the moment from CFS-V2. Precipitation-wise for July looks pretty dry, so it's not too bad from a rainfall perspective for most of northern Europe, coming out drier than average, with the wetter average anomalies down across southern Europe. But by the time you get through to August, look at that, most parts of western Europe have actually turned wetter than average, and the UK also looks rather wetter than average as well. So still, it's been an idea in the works within the CFS-V2 for quite a while, still the idea that the further on we get into this summer, the more the pattern deteriorates. So by the time you get through to August, actually the model is going for quite a cool and unsettled month. But it wouldn't take that much of an adjustment to actually turn that into quite a hot month, maybe with a lot of thunderstorms, kind of month we had in August 1997, for example. There is a similarity to that kind of pattern. But the model itself is actually going for quite a cool and quite an unsettled August, and quite a cool and unsettled end to the summer. Going to do the CFS 6 months look ahead on Saturday, so that will take us from next month, from July, and we'll extend out to December with that. But it is just for fun, particularly as you get through to those sort of month 3, 4, 5, 6 months away, then that really just is a bit of fun. But CFS 6 months look ahead will be coming up on Saturday anyway. Right, so that's your GWV Sunday Round-Up. I hope you found it interesting and informative. Don't forget to check out Solar Sunday as well. Well, that's all for now, and thanks for watching.